and you can hear him screaming in the background and clearly in shock of what he just did and wasn't thinking right and just, oh God, my wife, I killed my wife.
Welcome back to Other People's Lives. I'm Joe Santagato.
I'm Greg Dybec.
Just wanted to give a little thing out there for anyone who wants to be on the show. You can email us at oplpodcast or go right to our website, oplshow.com. If you feel like you have a story or something cool, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Yeah, and a big shout out to our patrons over at patreon.com/OPL show. They support the show directly. They help us keeping bringing you guys new content through that support. And for that, they get weekly bonus behind the scenes episodes. They get access to our Discord channel, as well as some episodes with guests that will never appear on this main channel. So if you would like to join the OPL community, just head over to patreon.com/OPL show. Now to get into today's episode. So, I think obviously we speak with a wide range of guests on the show with all types of stories, backgrounds, experiences, though every once in a while we kind of have the opportunity to speak with someone who has experienced such, I would say, an unimaginable or kind of heartbreaking tragedy, or, an experience that would truly top kind of the list of experiences that we as humans would really hope to never have to go through. And these people are brave enough to come on the show. They speak to us. They relive these moments and experiences so that we can get an understanding of, how someone is able to deal with such experiences, as well as grow, cope, learn, and kind of just continue to, live their lives despite such unfortunate circumstances. So these are, really powerful perspectives to hear, I think, and, rare ones. So we've got our guest on the line today, and we're going to be speaking with him about his experience as a child, where he actually witnessed his own father kill his mother in front of him. So we've got the guest on the line. Just want to take a second to, thank you so much for being on the show and your willingness to share all of this with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So, we understand the, main moment that we're about to discuss here today between your mother and your father. But before that, can you just briefly talk about the relationship between them? Was it a violent household? Did they argue frequently? Had you seen abuse take place, or was that not the case at all?
It wasn't. It was more verbal, physical. There wasn't really a lot of physical. It was more verbal abuse. I was very young when this was going on, so I don't know if I didn't fully understand what was happening or I blocked a lot of it out. Probably a little bit of both. But I can give an example of something that I do remember. It's really my father. I wasn't there for this. I was in front of my sister. I was probably outside playing or something. They got into a fight. This is when I was about 5, my mother and father, and my father put the gun to my mother's head and threatened her, and she called the police on him, and I remember him being away for a long time, but I didn't know why. And eventually she took him back and forgave him and blah, 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 because she wanted a family and all that. But so there was stuff going on behind the scenes I wasn't realizing, but they were together since my mother was 16. So, but I'm told by my family that they did love each other and they were very close, but as the years went on, my father became kind of a different person, basically. More controlling.
Why did he have a gun? Did he have like a licensed gun, or he was a police officer or something?
No, my father was very into guns. My grandfather was also into guns, so he had a pretty wide gun collection.
So you said that he went away. So he was arrested. How long was he away?
Oh, I'm not sure. I was at least 5 or 6. So I can't give you the exact date on that. I was a little young, but
no, was it like years or was it like a couple months?
No, it's probably maybe like a year, a few months, something like that.
Wow.
So he ended up coming back into your life, and this obviously kind of culminated into one particular argument. So when this argument happened, how old were you exactly?
I was 9.
Okay, and how well do you remember, what you saw that day and what transpired?
Problem is, well, I mean, I was going to say the problem is, but my most vivid memory of my parents is that day, unfortunately, because it's just drilled into my head. But so I do remember basically step for step, what went down. But yeah, I don't know if you want me to tell exactly what happened step by step or.
Yeah. I mean, we're interested. I mean, we just kind of wanted to know, of course, leading up to this moment, if it came out of nowhere or something. But it sounds like it was a pretty toxic relationship there.
Yeah. I mean,
But so,
not all the time was there fighting, but when there was fighting, it never got physical. Like to at least to my memory, to my seeing, I didn't
right.
see it was mostly verbal and a lot of back and forth and yelling. Um, the morning of the incident, it was just it was a Wednesday morning, and it was a normal middle day, school getting ready for school, and they had a little argument, which isn't uncommon. And I went in the room, and it just escalated and escalated. And he just took one of his guns and he went after her, and down the hall. And he kept shooting, and she unfortunately, she fell, and she was trying to make a call to the police, but she never made it. And I. I eventually called the police myself because that's what I was always taught to do. And I didn't see what happened from them because the phone was in the laundry room and it was attached. There was a phone that was attached to the wall, so I was told to stay about the phone. But my little sister was with my father the whole time, walking around the house, and you can hear him screaming in the background, and clearly in shock of what he just did, and he wasn't thinking right, and just oh God, my wife, I killed my wife. And it was a very scary situation. I didn't fully understand what was happening at first. I didn't want to understand what was happening. To be honest, I probably happened, and it's just that's how it was.
Was there any point like during your upbringing that you felt like something like this could be possible, or was it ever a worry in your mind that like my father might be violent?
No, no, no.
Geez. So that day, you're essentially just kind of like a bystander through all this. I guess there was just basically like the fact that you were there, that your sister were there. It didn't matter. I guess in the fit of rage or whatever your father was kind of experiencing at the time, he just basically ended up shooting your mother in front of you. So you said that you ended up calling the police. Is that something that you did kind of right away? And do you remember what you said to them?
Well, when he shot her, when he took the gun and went to shoot her, she shut the door behind him. He shot through the door. He opened the door and walked down the hall, and that's where he unfortunately took a life. At first, I don't think I fully comprehended what was happening. So, like, I just was didn't like in shock and didn't believe, and I just went up to her, her, and I realized she was dying, and I then realized I had to do something. I didn't know what to do. My father was pacing, screaming, yelling, and I was scared. So I went to the phone and I called 911, and I just stayed by the phone until the cops came. It wasn't immediate. I mean, there was a lot of walking around, pacing, crying.
Jeez, that's I
So
mean, obviously something no child should ever have to see, and we're obviously sorry that you even had to experience that moment.
Yeah. No.
So your father, though, you said that he immediately, from his behavior, kind of sounded like he immediately regret what he had done.
My father, yeah, he had a very bad temper. He would fly off the handle very easily, and start screaming and yelling. But like I said before, he was never physical to my memory of my mother. But he had a lot of mental problems too. I don't know exactly what he was diagnosed with. Again, I was too young to know all this, but he also had a drug problem. He sold drugs. He took drugs. He he was a very troubled person.
So I'm assuming, after you call the cops arrive, your father's still there. And did you kind of tell them what happened, or did he?
Well, the police came in. They arrested him. They took me and my sister to a police car, and then we were escorted from the police car across the street to a distant neighbor's house where people came and investigated and wanted to know what was going on. And yeah, and that's what happened after that. I never saw my father again for a few years after that. Yeah.
Did you end up living with family, or what happened in that setup?
Luckily, my family, one of the first things they did was make sure that they got custody of us. And, yeah, so me and my sister were raised by my aunt, my mother's older sister.
Gotcha. Now, you're 9 at the time, and you witness something just pretty unimaginable by any standards for anyone to witness. And do you remember, if at all, just like how that sort of immediately affected you or your sister? Because now suddenly your entire family, as you know it, is gone. Do you remember like how you even began to process that at that age?
The thing is I I don't think I wanted to accept it or fully understand it. And I've also, this I didn't say, I'm also on the spectrum. I was a wild child. That was a lot worse when I was little. And family considered not actually, having me go into foster care because they couldn't deal with me. So I was a crazy child who didn't understand that, who did his own thing, who was, jumping off the top of the house thinking he could fly. So yeah, so that's not a joke. So I wasn't comprehending it. I wasn't thinking about it. I didn't try to think about it. Of course, for years in therapy, they tried to talk about it, but I always, brushed it off. Didn't want to think about my parents. It was just too painful. It wasn't until years later when it really hit me, like years and years later. My sister, it affected a lot sooner, especially since her birthday was the next day, which was really hard for her. Of course, it was really hard for her. Her 5th birthday. So, yeah.
So, I mean, you said that you didn't see your father for a couple of years. So can you kind of describe like the first time you see him after this sort of thing?
Yeah. So my family didn't want me seeing him. Unfortunately, my mother's, obviously I understand their feelings, but they kept me away for a long time. And when they finally felt it was okay for me to see him, that I saw him, he wasn't able to speak at that point. He had diabetes and MS, and it was slowly taking hold of him. So the first time I saw him, he barely speak, but he recognized who I was. I saw him one time after that. He was almost complete vegetable, and the last time I saw him was like a month before he died, and he was not even coherent. He wasn't even there. So,
Wow. So when you did plan to finally see him, how angry, if at all, were you at this stage, or what were you hoping to get kind of from that first meeting with him?
Oh, again, I was still young. I must have, I was in my early teens or maybe preteens when I first saw him. It wasn't anger. It was more of just, indifference, to be honest, because I'm not happy what he did, but I never got a chance to know him. I never, when I was a kid, I wasn't with my parents constantly. If I was with anybody, it was with my mother or outside playing. That was it, mostly outside. Just, we had a big yard and swings and stuff, and I was, like I said, a little kid that ran around all the time. So I feel bad because I should have wanted to see him more, I feel, but I didn't. I didn't because it was just painful, and I just, But the first time I saw him again, I couldn't communicate. I just wanted to tell him I love him, and, that's all I could say, and I had to leave because it wasn't like we're going to have a conversation.
Yeah. Now, I feel like some people listening, the thought here is probably like saying that you love this person or just wanting to see this person. I feel like it would be easy for people maybe not in this situation to just think, how could I ever love that person? Or why would I even ever want to see this person again? So can you describe that a little, of, that feeling of still kind of, I guess, loving him because he's your father? Or it just seems like a really complicated dynamic.
Yeah, it's a complicated dynamic. See, I love him because he's my father. I hate what he did. My sister feels the same way, to be honest. Like, we don't hate him as a person. We know, there was a lot of other things that went down through the years. We know that he was a good person, but as time went on, he changed, and he became a very awful, mean individual. But I still love him because he's my father. That's just how I see it.
Do you think it had anything to do with, the fact that you said he was, doing drugs and kind of indulging in these harmful activities?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's partly to do with that, but it's all partly like his own makeup, himself. I know how my grandfather was, like with his anger, my father's father. So I can see how my father would get that anger. 'Cause my grandfather flings off the handle for nothing, And so I get it. Like, again, I was too young when a lot of this stuff went down, so who knows what else happened when I was that young.
So what kind of like, if you could pinpoint it, like what kind of like lasting impact does this, have on a person, you specifically,
Well, I mean, it's hard to go a day without thinking of your parents. I mean, it didn't really hit me like until I turned 21. That was when it really hit me, because that's like, that's a big day for someone. They're fully an adult now, and I just started thinking of things I couldn't do with my mother, and I never got to do it with my mother, never got to talk about, and I never actually sat and thought about that for all those years, believe it or not. So that's when it hit me real hard. My sister, it hit harder when she was younger, but it just never took me longer to realize that she's gone. That's it.
So how do you start to explore those feelings when, like you said, you turn 21 and it's really starting to hit you that now your mother's not there and she was taken away from you? You mentioned therapy before, but what were some of the ways you kind of, explored these thoughts and feelings and tried to either, maybe dive in further to kind of understand them or get over this trauma in a sense?
Well, I mean, I haven't really done much in therapy, to be honest. I haven't really. I've been in therapy before this happened. I was in therapy as long as I can remember, but I don't normally touch upon this. Something I've been doing for myself to try to help with the feelings is, unfortunately, Corona put that on halt, but I was trying to make like a little essay video or whatever. I wanted to interview family and get to know who my parents were, since I never really got to fully know them. And unfortunately, there's a lot of family on my mother's side. My father's side, there's only two people really I can go to. One of them I can't trust, and one of them wasn't in the picture for most of his life. So I can't find out much about my father, but I started to go around and interview family and ask who my mother was, things she liked, the basic stuff. And it was a way of helping me feel like I got to know her a little more. Because like I said, I was young. I never connected with my mother at that point.
Yeah, that's such a great and powerful idea. I think personally, to kind of go down that journey on your own and just kind of hear from the people who did know them and basically paint your own picture of who they were as people.
Yes.
Wow. So you did mention, I think in the email, where you had come across comments and things too of like, I know you sent clips, newspaper clips and things like that. And we kind of saw the articles of your father getting arrested. And you said that you had seen some people's or strangers kind of response to your father. I don't know if it was like online or not, basically saying like he should burn in hell and all the things that he deserves. And you said that was a really kind of unsettling, feeling, and you're kind of horrified by that. Could you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that had to do with some. I don't know what year it came out, but Natalie Merchant, the singer, made a concert documentary about domestic violence, and she dedicated it to my mother. And my mother has a part. Her story has a part in the film. And when I was invited to the premiere, and I went to the premiere, and there was all these like drawings and things on the walls from victims and families, and there was one big poster that said Anthony deserves to burn in hell, and it made me feel very uncomfortable. But I knew it was coming from people that were hurt, or people that that went through the similar situation. It's hard to see my father as a villain, even though I know what he did was awful. It's just he's still my father, so I can't think of him in that way that other people think of him. My cousin Teresa was my mother's niece, very close to my mother, and when everything happened, she rescued a lot of the pictures and stuff for the house, from the house, and she gave it to us years later. And a lot of the pictures with my father, he was ripped out of them, and she apologized for that years later. She was like, I just couldn't stand to look at him, and I'm like, I understand that, but those are pictures of me, my father, my mother, and my sister, and I would like to have my father included in those pictures. So, it hurt them, and I know it hurt them very much, but it's a hard thing.
Yeah, it's just, trying to wrap your head around this situation of how complicated and how complex that is for you to be in that position, because it's true. And we all do it in a sense. We hear these stories, or maybe true crime stories specifically, and, pass our judgment, possibly, rightfully so, onto people who commit heinous crimes and acts against other people. Like, obviously, no one's condoning that, but to think of someone in your position, that's kind of the person no one thinks about in these scenarios. Just the son who had his mother taken from him by his father, but is still, we're so young that like we all want a father figure in our lives. And I'm trying to, it's impossible, but trying to put myself in those shoes of, what it would take for a family member or someone to do for you to just be able to so easily write them off and see them as a villain. That must be so difficult when it's your family.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch, my mother took a lot of home videos. Unfortunately, a lot of them were lost after this. But again, my cousin Teresa saved what she could, and I would watch them, and you can clearly see my father loved me and my sister very much, and he always would play with us and be very, and there was good qualities to him. He was an excellent drummer. He was a great carpenter. He built the house that we lived in, so he was very skilled electrician. He went to so it wasn't like, I want to point out, it wasn't like it's all negative. He was a drug user and he had all these problems. There was a good side to him. Unfortunately, that day, that good side wasn't there.
Yeah, no, wow. It's just, it's that, just to be human, I guess, it doesn't mean we're all monsters to the core, but, so many of us, and maybe all of us, are capable of terrible acts like that, potentially. So it's like you said, when you're looking at the lifetime of it, this person did a terrible thing, but this person also did great things for you, or brought you into the world, or you've even been able to see positive moments of him making your mother happy. And it's a lot to navigate. It's a lot to take in. I can't imagine, but I think it's, like I said before, really cool to hear that you're kind of going down that journey to, understand your family and kind of piece this bigger picture, together, because it was sort of taken from you, when you were young. And is that something that you want to continue? Obviously, you said, pandemic kind of put a halt to that, but that's kind of a project that you want to continue taking on.
I definitely want to continue taking it on. I have a whole list of questions to ask family, and I would like to make like a compilation, like, maybe an auto recording or something. Get get stories down, get all that stuff down. I feel it would be very helpful for me, and it's also just, I think, a good thing to do to preserve your family history.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a really cool project, again. And is your, relationship with your other family close, or has it been difficult at all because of, like you said, your mom has a lot of family on that side, and have they just kind of completely blacklisted your father, or are they kind of willing to, help you explore this and complete this project?
Oh no, they're willing and open to talk about my mother. My family, I'm pretty close to my family. I mean, there's some of them that hate my father more than others. It wasn't like, my Aunt Jody, who raised me, she got along with my father fine. It's just their baby sister was lost. She was taken from them. So, of course, they're going to be angry and upset, and they have every right to be. And I don't say, that's wrong or not. But, some family refuse to talk about. My main thing I want to learn is not just my mother and my father, but them as a couple, because they were together. My mother was with him since she was 16 till her death. I think she was 39 or something. So that was basically, her whole life they were together, and he was only 4 years older. And that's a lot. That's a good chunk of their lives. But if my family doesn't want to talk about him, you're missing, that chunk, which is what I would like to know. Their relationship, how it was,
Do you forgive him?
I forgive him, because I feel like I just couldn't keep living with just hating and being like, why, I truly believe that wasn't, like, deep down what he wanted. I believe he just, for whatever reason, just snapped and did not think of the long outcome, and rage just took over. Um, you know, yeah.
Wow. Well, before we wrap up, is there anything we didn't cover, or any kind of last message or anything that you would want to leave?
Really, I just feel that domestic violence is something that should be talked about more, and unfortunately, I'm ashamed to say I haven't done much to talk about it. My family has. My cousin, like I said, I keep bringing up, she did a lot after this happened. I got into a relationship that ended up being physical. It was verbal and ended in physical, and luckily I got out of it before it became, you know, like that. But I just want to say that I don't know how to say it. I understand. I don't want to say it like how my mother must have felt in a way, kind of, which is when you love someone, you care about them, you say to yourself, "Oh, it'll get better. Just need some help, and things will get better." But they don't get better. They get worse and worse and worse. And then if you don't get out of it, it's gonna get real bad. So I unfortunately learned the hard way, but luckily it didn't come to where I lost my life to this person.
No, absolutely. I think it's an important message. It's something we've luckily been able to cover on the show before, but I think it always helps to just to have someone like yourself, voice these stories and just show the real effects of this, the human side of this. Specifically, someone in your position who experienced this is a new perspective for us as well. And yeah, I mean, just thank you so much. And the obvious bravery and courage it takes to relive and share a story like this, and just to have this conversation, and just to try to make these conversations normal when possible, around domestic violence and warning signs and things like this. So I think it's a great message, and we seriously thank you, so much for sharing all of that with us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Today's episode is actually sponsored by a new card game that Joe and I created. If you guys don't know, we've been working on this game for over a year now, and it's called Pay the Price, and it's a trivia party game. So we love trivia, we love ridiculous party games, so we decided to combine that into one experience. And the way it works is you get together with a group, someone is read a trivia card. If they get it right, they keep the card and it's a point. But if they get it wrong, then they have to pull a consequence card. So a consequence card is a ridiculous or embarrassing challenge that they have to complete to keep that card and get a point. So it could be anything from having to sing for the rest of the game, performing karaoke, giving a lap dance to a player, a ton of other, awkward and funny challenges that kind of range from funny to just absolutely ridiculous. And we're excited about this game. We wrote every single card, and right now you can support the game by pre-ordering it on our Kickstarter. And this helps us turn this dream into a reality to get this thing mass produced and make as many as possible. And it also makes sure that you will be the first one to get your hands on it when it comes out. So all you have to do is head over to kickstarter.paythepricegame.com, and that's where you can learn more about it. You can watch a video of our friends playing the game, and of course you can back the project, which is the same as pre-ordering a copy if you would like one for yourself. So thanks so much, guys, for supporting this project. That's kickstarter.paythepricegame.com. We've had a lot of conversations that have been hard to wrap our heads around. I don't know exactly where this falls on that, but it's high on the list because it's just truly a perspective I never would think about. Especially so many of us love consuming these types of stories, or like this is true crime in a sense, domestic abuse, but like from his perspective as a child, and just that. Just how difficult it is to still want some sort of normalcy or love for your parents, but then one of your parents is the villain who took the life of your other parent. Like, I don't know. I'm just having a hard time understanding how I would even begin to think in that situation.
It's just very sad. It's very sad when you think about it because he's a young kid. He doesn't really know his parents at like 5 years old, even 9 years old. I mean, you know them, but you don't really know them because, you know, as people yet, because they're like your parents, you know, and for that to happen. And then it's also like, you know, it's not that it's one thing. I'm not going to use that expression because that would kind of like downplay one, like a part of this, but both of these emotions of just being someone who has to deal with seeing their mother be murdered by their father in front of them, that already is very confusing and traumatic. But then also having to deal with, well, I don't really know my parents at all, and everyone's telling me to hate this guy, and he's doing, you know, he did a horrible thing to this woman who I loved, my mother, but I can't hate him. Like, that also is a very confusing and traumatic thing that will just follow him for the rest of his life. Right. And it's really scary, man. And like, as you know, he talked about domestic violence, and yeah, it's just it's scary. And you know, my parents aren't together anymore. My parents are separated, and there were times growing up where, you know, everyone's screaming at each other, or it's very loud, and you're scared, and you're young, and you don't know what the fuck is going on. You know, my father has never put his hands on my mother ever, but they would like scream at each other. But it's like, it kind of, you know, makes me really emotional to think about, you know, and that's why I asked him of like, have you ever thought about that ever happening? Like, have you ever like been young and hearing your parents argue, and you're like, am I in one of these households that people talk about where their family like is fighting, and like because there's a big fight going on, everyone else is fighting with each other over the fight, and like it's just not a good place to be. And that's why I was like, did you ever think that he would be violent? And he's just like, no, and like he never was, but he did the ultimate act of violence and murdered his mother. And it just really makes you think, and it just kind of across the board with domestic violence, you know, a lot of the times it's a person who people would be like, I never would have thought it would be them. I never would have thought my dad. I never would have thought that guy, or, you know, this guy or whatever. Like, no one ever thinks about that. Like, this person is capable of that. And it's just very scary. And what he said at the end of the episode was very important, about, you know, when you love someone very much, you think that, you know, I just need to try harder, or I need to put more time in and they'll get better, or, you know, whatever, but they're just going to get worse. And for whatever reason, whether it be drugs, whether it be alcohol, or some sort of mental, you know, disease that they have, you know, it's going to get worse. And like, the best thing you can do is sort of remove yourself from the situation and then kind of let it, you know, take care of itself in that way. But I mean, like I said, I can't even imagine, you know, what this kid is, you know, going through, you know, the traumatic experience at a young age to now the mental after effect of dealing with everyone's telling me to hate this man, and I just can't find it in my heart to hate him because I don't know him. I don't know anything about him. I know what he did, but I don't know what kind of person he was, or what, you know. It's just wild, man.
Yeah, that dilemma to deal with on that scale of forgiveness, like that's a dilemma most of us will never truly encounter. I think on small scales, sure, we're hurt in many ways by people, whether it's their words, their actions, certain experiences, and we have to, you know, really wrestle with the idea of forgiveness and truly forgiving someone. Like, most of us have dealt with and will deal with those situations, but forgiveness on that scale is something that's, you know, hard to imagine what goes through your mind to be able to make that decision and be able to understand what forgiveness means for you, for someone who has done something so bad. It's the ultimate evil. You know, he took a life of another human, and you know, it's just it's hard to imagine. But I think for him, you know, we can't judge his decision, and you know, that's on him. And you know, like he said, for him it would have been harder for him to live with not forgiving his father. So I think we have to accept that, and we have to believe like it's only his decision to make. It's none of ours, no matter how easy it is to pass judgment on someone who commits a crime or does something so evil. But at least for him, I think it's just interesting that he's exploring this journey, and he's kind of going down his own path, or this project, as he said, to just understand his family and just take the evidence of who they were as people, what their relationship was, and his choice to not let that one act overshadow everything. That's his personal choice, and I respect it, and I think it's great that he's at least exploring that to find his own answers and not just letting noise from others kind of dictate his decision. So I think to me that seems like a really healthy way to approach such an unimaginable situation.
Yeah, because I can imagine like putting something off and not thinking about it too much, and then it hitting you. He said on his like 21st birthday, or when he turned 21, you have to do something with that, to continue to suppress this, especially something that's so traumatic and huge in your life. It's just not good, because that can lead to something bad down the line, so that's why, I always recommend to anyone who's feeling like overwhelmed or anything, like, therapy is a good way to, or even just like talking to someone, just having someone you could speak to and put all your stuff on is like huge, because being able to have that mental release of like, I'm not walking around with this alone. Like, no one understands, or no one is going to get it, or no one knows my story. When you have a therapist, they know everything about you. If you're honest with them and you tell them everything, and you've been with them for a certain amount of time, like you feel like you have someone at least. You don't feel like alone. It doesn't feel as heavy as it once did. Speaking from experience, like I just started doing therapy probably like 7 months ago, and it feels like that. It feels like, there is someone who kind of understands, like, and there is someone who is very helpful, even if they're not given, like, they don't have to be giving out gems of advice. It's just kind of like, you just need someone to listen and not going to judge you, and just be like a unbiased person who's just going to take in all the information and know shit about you, and kind of help you sift through that. So for him to take it in his own hands and to be like, you know what, like, yes, I'm in therapy, but also I want to know who my parents are, so I'm going to do these interviews. Like, I think that's a really cool and creative way to, gain some closure, at least, like knowing them better as people, and not just this person is a victim and this person was the person who murdered her. Like,
yeah,
that must be a tough thing.
Yeah, it's going to be the closest thing he can get to, having his parents around in the good times, I guess, growing up with them. So yeah, I think we for sure wish him best of luck on that. I hope he continues with that, and we'll definitely try to keep in touch with him as well. But wow, I mean, probably the 100th time we've said it on this show, but it's the guests that come on that make this show, and that's just another example of an amazing guest willing to relive that story and share that perspective with us. So grateful to be able to talk with someone like that.
Yeah. And for anyone out there who wants to be a part of the show, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Go to oplshow.com or send us an email at oplpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram at OPL Podcast. And like we said in the beginning, if you want to support the show while also getting a bunch of bonus episodes and content, you can become a patron at patreon.com/OPL show. And we'll see you next week.
Yep.